This is Kalc. Hello everyone, I'm Kalia, creator and host of the Admiration series with a focus in creative women in business in collaboration with Kalc. And today I've got entrepreneur, creator of the award-winning Kids Kitchen Cooking School and rapid transformation therapist, Nicole, joining us today. Hey, Nicole, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks, Kalia.
That's great. It's so fantastic to have you on the show. I know that we don't really know each other very well. We sort of, follow each other on social media, on Instagram, but I'm really looking forward to just getting to know you a lot more today and what it is that you do. I am really inspired by your entrepreneurial spirit. I think that this is probably the key thing that really draw me to you and your work. I love what you do with children in terms of teaching them how to cook, and what you do with your YouTube channel is just phenomenal. But also the things that you do from a transformational therapist point of view, and how just wide and varied those two things are, I think is incredible. You go from like chocolate brownies and butternut bhajis to, helping people like transform their lives and empowering them to achieve their potential. And for me, I just find that so phenomenal. So really, that's probably where I want to start. I just want to find out more about you and sort of tell me what's your story and how you got here.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a bit of a windy path, as you say, quite seemingly unrelated. And actually, I started off, I don't think you know this, as an accountant. So completely different, and probably what some people would say not very creative. And then I always kind of had a bit itchy feet, and I left there when I had my daughter. And I was a bit bored at home. And then I saw that a lot of the kids, by the time I had my son, actually, so then I'd had two kids, and my son was a really fussy eater, and I saw lots of other kids were. So I'd always loved cooking. So I was like, So it was really a business born out of, the usual thing that we say in business, oh, is there a need? There's a problem that somebody's not fixed. So I started running these cooking classes, which were amazing, and really loved it because I was able to put some of the business stuff that I'd learned, that I'd studied, that I'd, consulted on into practice. And then I found, because I was working a lot with fussy eaters, there was a lot of stuff there around labeling. We'll sort of say like, oh, well, Kalia won't eat broccoli because she's a fussy eater, or she's picky, or whatever. And there were some real mindset issues there that I started to work on. So I've done kind of courses working with the parents, working with the children. And that really, led me over into thinking about mindset. And that's when I kind of trained in his work with kind of the subconscious mind and where some of those blocks, if you like, are. And now it's kind of come full circle, because in that side of my business, I usually work with women in business who've got some mindset blocks about, being visible, maybe showing up, how they can be creative, how they can run a business and do it differently, those kinds of things. So I kind of think there's a thread in all of them, but I know on the surface they look really strange, kind of cooking, accounting, hypnotherapy, it all looks very different.
That is so cool. I absolutely love the links in between them. At what point did it kind of become more obvious? Like, how far were you into with your cooking school? And I'm guessing back then, was it online, or were you doing it in person?
No. Yeah, that's a great point. So it was all in person. I had a kind of real local business because, again, it fitted around the needs of my family. So it was a lifestyle business that I designed for a particular reason. Yeah. And then, you're right. During lockdown, of course, everything shifted. Business disappeared overnight. I was actually going to sell that business before lockdown to focus on my other one. So the plan wasn't to juggle so many things. And then I ran a load of free classes online because so many people were frustrated being at home. And I thought this was a great opportunity for families, and I mean that in the widest sense. I had lots of adults, even without kids, to cook from scratch and to be really healthy, learn a new skill. And it's so great for your mental health too, because you're just switching off and getting into that creative process. And then from there, it kind of grew this online business. So now it's online, not in person.
Oh, that's really fantastic. I think that what it is that you do and how you've been able to link those things. And I mean, starting off with children as well and understanding the fussy eater sort of side of things. I mean, now too, that is such a important thing for families, and how you've been able to maneuver in mindset, women in business, the creativity part, I think is really fantastic. So well done. Yeah, honestly, so fantastic. And I know that I am someone who is incredibly admired with what it is that you do, and really inspired by what it is that you do. I'm kind of really interested to know who it is that has inspired you, or who you've admired to, get your inspiration. Where's that come from?
Yeah, I love that question. It's really interesting. Often when people get asked that question, they say like, oh, I really admire Michelle Obama, or, they pick on some like Mother Teresa or something like that. And I would say, not that I don't admire people like that. Mm-hmm. Actually, what admires me is pretty much anybody, particularly any women running a business. Mm-hmm. So they're often the people that are not famous, they're people like you. And, and I really do mean that sincerely, who are running their business, who are trying to make a difference. And it's more kind of what they're doing. I mean, there was if you know Nigella Lawson, the cook, the cookery book author, there's quite a well-known quote that she said many years ago about, kind of the people that she admired. It was in relation to cooking. Obviously, we're not the famous chefs who are like, they're, at front of stage and everybody knows their name. It's the ordinary men and women, usually women, let's be honest, at home, who are putting 3 meals on the table every day. They're the unsung heroes. And I think that always really resonated with me. And that's the same kind of thing. I think who I admire are those people that have got off their backside, maybe got out of the corporate, rat race, and who have decided, I'm going to do this and I'm going to set up my business. So yeah. I can't give you a name, but I can give you probably lots of you would be one. So.
Oh, bless you. That's incredible. I mean, that's incredible. And even a lot of the description that you used, I mean, when I have seen so many of the things that you're doing, when you talk about women who are entrepreneurial or juggling different things and doing so many things with their own business, I mean, that is you to a T. So even when you, were describing that, I mean, do you have admiration for yourself? Is that something that, is familiar to you?
Oh, that is a good question. Now, interestingly, from a mindset thing, because I would put my hand up and say we all have these mindset monkeys. Yeah. That's not something that I have been very good at. It's definitely something I work with clients on, and in both businesses, but particularly kind of the mindset stuff. And I think that's something we all need to be better on, because we're always like, whatever level we are, we're always looking to the next thing. We were talking before about this kind of compare, despair. It's like, oh, well, I'm here, but Carly is much further ahead. Carly is making more money, or has got more clients or whatever. And we don't stop, do we, to think about what I've done. So sometimes that reality check is quite interesting, particularly as I've kind of changed jobs or done different things, and people are like, wow, you're amazing, and you're like, no, I'm not. So listening to other people, I think, because we're our own harshest critic, but yeah, I would say it is really rewarding to have set something up, as from scratch. But I think very few of us take the time to really celebrate what we've done rather than look forward.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, talking about women and women in business, I think it's no surprise it's such a niche within that, and I love that you talked about the ordinary women, the women who are putting those 3 meals on the table, and linking that in with Nigella as well. I think that obviously the series is titled Creative Women in Business, and it's something that when I look at you, I absolutely believe that. I guess in terms of that title, I mean, how does that resonate with you? Is it something that's quite light and airy, or is it, heavy and comes with a load of like weight and responsibility? Where do you sort of sit with that?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I probably wouldn't have described myself as creative or seen it as a creative woman in business. Yeah. I think because for so much of my life, it has been, like I said, kind of that sort of academic corporate background, particularly is not really creative. It's very much, kind of left brain, logical mind, rather than that creative, right side of your brain. And for me, it's kind of both. It feels kind of quite light because it's almost quite new and quite exciting and fun, and I like it. But I can see how equally sometimes that responsibility, like, oh my God, can I come up with new stuff? Can I, how do I do this differently? But it's challenge, and I quite like a challenge.
Yeah. And what really, do you have a process for coming up with, say, new things, like new recipes, or even like a new business? Do you have a process within that?
Well, for the kind of cooking stuff, I mean, yeah, it's more of it's different each time, but the process is the same. So I won't necessarily come up with a recipe. For me, I suppose in both my businesses, it's often about the teaching and how to get something across, how to help somebody to change their life in a different way. So yeah, I guess over time I've learned how, probably like you, how you kind of share that knowledge in a fun way. You know, there are particular things, for example, if I was teaching you to cook, I'd be doing that differently to teaching a child. I would use a lot of the same stuff because I want it to be fun, but there's different ways of doing that. And then obviously I'm, you know, bringing in some of that mindset stuff as well, so that I'm, you know, making sure I get my point across. But for setting up a new business, I think I tend to kind of follow my heart. Maybe that's quite a creative thing, following your intuition. So if I think that there's a need there, or it's something I enjoy doing, I do that. So it's probably not sticking to the entrepreneurial rules of, you know, doing extensive market research.
Yeah.
But I think that tapping into your intuition is something I try constantly to get better at. And I think for people that are really creative, that comes more naturally to people that have maybe been in a more, I don't want to say straitjacket environment, but do you know what I mean? You know, some people are much more, you know, following rules and processes, and some people are much more kind of blue sky thinking.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting. I mean, you know, you sort of said the left and the right side brain before, but I think how they complement each other, and probably the more traditional boundaries of that are starting to break down. I mean, even taking you and all the different entrepreneurial businesses that you have, it really shows that. It shows the elements of logic and creativity and how they're all really merged into one. You know, we've spoken quite a lot about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial endeavors, and I really see you as someone, even when you were talking before about how you would, you know, teach and share that knowledge in different ways across different people, through learning and development. And you sort of already touched on it, you know, children and adults. There are so many similarities, but I guess how you would communicate and engage with them would be quite different. So I want to kind of explore these a little bit more, and yeah, just dig into the links between them, in terms of the mindset. You know, tell me about maybe how you would engage, say, someone of the age of 5 versus 25 versus 65. How do you do that?
So, well, some of those, I mean, this was kind of stuff that I was doing intuitively with children. And I should say I'm not a trained teacher, and I'm not a trained chef actually either. So it really is about making people enjoy it. I know that sounds really so obvious. It's like a stupid thing to say, but, you know, really understanding how the mind works. The mind works to, you know, it's more attracted to pleasure than it is to pain. You know, we talk about, if you know that phrase, the kind of, you know, donkey with the kind of carrot and stick approach. You know, are you that kind of person I'm going to dangle a carrot and you're going to move towards that, or are you the kind of person I'm going to have to whack with the stick? And generally it's a kind of carrot approach. So you want to make it fun, particularly for children. So, you know, you wouldn't, let's say, for example, a child's a fussy eater and doesn't eat broccoli. You know, traditionally what we do as parents or whatever, we'd sit down and we go, oh, the broccoli's lovely. Why don't you eat it? Oh, look, mummy's eating it. It's fantastic. And we make it so much of a pressured environment for the child that it's no longer fun. We're focused on that objective. So I tend to focus more on kind of a sensory exploration. So in that example, but this would, you know, so I might be, oh, let's take beetroot, for example. It's one of my favorites. We would paint with beetroot stalks. We would do things. So they're starting to touch stuff. So I'm not saying to them, touch this, you know, why don't you pick it up? Which a really fussy eater would not want to do, but I'm doing it in a fun way. So I'm not telling them what we're achieving, but they're doing it anyway. And stories with children are a great way of bringing that in. So there's all of that kind of positive role modeling. And it's kind of the same with an adult, but obviously you wouldn't dumb it down to that level. And ultimately what I find with all of the work I do, but particularly kind of, you know, cooking, it's about confidence. So, you know, a child as a fussy eater is essentially not confident that that food is safe, right? That they want to eat it. An adult who, you know, so many people I know don't like cooking or will say to me, I'm a disastrous cook. It's not that they're a disastrous cook. It's just they lack confidence in the kitchen because they've probably not been shown, or maybe they've used a recipe that, to be honest, probably wasn't a great recipe and it failed. And then that story in their mind is, see, I can't bake a cake. That cake just sunk. And it just, you know, we're all looking for, kind of, the phrase is confirmation bias. So we're all looking to have confirmed what we think. And if you think you're a terrible baker, or you think your child's not going to eat that food, you're looking for evidence to corroborate that, really, but you're not looking at everything else out there. So it's trying to use those principles and weave them into the work that I do without kind of feeling like I'm force feeding you theory. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. Completely makes sense. And I think in terms of I love it. I love when you're talking about the sensory experience and also the painting with the beetroot stalks for children. I mean, that sort of storytelling aspect, or that sense of tactileness, or the ability that works so well with children. Do you do elements of that? I mean, I know you said about the kind of, you know, not dumbing it down, but do you use elements of that same level of sensory experience or creativity with adults as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if I was kind of doing cooking with them, absolutely. And lots of things are naturally sensory activities. You know, if you're baking bread, for example, it is naturally get your hands in and get dirty. And that's actually something a lot of adults and kids, particularly now in COVID, but I think a lot of people stress with, because we're so keen about being germ-free and tidy, and we don't kind of roll our sleeves up and just get painting anymore. But yeah, even in kind of my mindset work, I do a lot of little fun games to show people how suggestible or how receptive their minds are to different suggestions. There are lots of activities that, well, I could show you some now, but they probably won't come out so well for those that are just listening. But there are lots of things you can do to be creative. And I think a visual representation, or sorry, visual, I don't know, but something that's more than just learning in the mind is really good, because we all learn in different ways. I think that's the point, whether you're 2, 22, 52, 82, it doesn't matter. Everybody has their own learning style. So understanding what your kind of client or your customers' learning style is really powerful. Some people are more visual. You know, it's like if I gave you a recipe, you might be the kind of person who reads it, who understands it, and who can just follow it. Other people would not buy a cookery book if it didn't have like loads of pictures in it. Yeah. Other people don't work that way, but if I've taught them to do it once, they'll remember it, and that's their style of learning. So it's the same kind of idea. It's sort of learning those styles, but I guess also my approach probably in both my businesses has been in a way of incorporating elements of all of that, so that, you know, something resonates with everybody that's there.
I'm quite interested to ask what your learning style is.
Oh, good question. Yeah, I'm a mix. I would say I've shifted. I probably was a very straightforward kind of, you know, put in the hours, learn the stuff, learn it by rote kind of child, which I think was probably of its time. But I am also quite visual. I find that I'm like if we go on holiday, for example, I go to a new location, I'm not great with spatial awareness. Like if I was driving somewhere, I wouldn't remember a road name, or that I haven't got a great sense of direction. I will do it visually. I'll be like, oh yeah, it was past that shop on the corner. And then, you know, so I'm very visual like that. But in hypnosis, I'm not very visual. Yeah, and that's your subconscious mind. So it's elements of all of it. I would say probably kinesthetic learning. And I like mixing it all up.
Fantastic. Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. I think I really would like to delve in a little bit more into, you know, you've spoken a lot about things like confidence, intuition, you know, having the knowledge or being knowledgeable. I think I'd like to understand more what your like core values are, and probably how you use that in your work too, and if that has a effect on your style of learning, or even your mode of teaching as well.
Oh, good question. I would say my core values are things like integrity, honesty, and probably loyalty, which I know that's kind of what I want to say, thinking about how that applies in my business. I would say I'm very much kind of what you see is what you get. I don't beat around the bush with people. And I kind of really give 110%, which I know an awful thing to say, especially as an accountant or ex-accountant. But I'm really passionate about helping my clients and kind of going that extra mile. So I think that's what they would say. But I think underlying all of that is some element of fun, because you don't want it to be boring. You know, none of us are at school. So it doesn't have to be boring. You can teach in a better way. And I suppose that's, probably reflects what I like in terms of where I've gone for training, or organizations I've worked with where they've sort of sat well with me. It is about that. There has to be kind of that integrity and that, you know, we were talking about this before, weren't we? Ability to have kind of two-way feedback and two-way dialogue, to feel that, you know, you're respected and vice versa. And the same thing, I would like my clients to be honest with me. You know, if something doesn't work or they didn't enjoy it, I would, you know, appreciate that feedback.
Yes. And have you ever been in kind of any situations where, because I mean, I love that you have such a playful element to you that really comes across, and this element of the fun aspect. I mean, have you ever been in a scenario where you felt an element of, oh gosh, I can't be like this, or there's an environment that's creating, oh, I can't be in this sort of way, and then has there been a situation then where that affects maybe some limiting beliefs about what you can or cannot do in certain environments or certain clients? I'm quite interested.
Well, the first example, as you were saying that sprung to mind won't surprise you, when I was an accountant, where kind of it is a bit like square peg in round hole. So I mean, I was doing that at a time where there weren't that many women. Women didn't wear trousers. I mean, I sound like a dinosaur, but you know, women didn't. So but you know, having that creativity and, for example, dressing the way you want within the rules. But I kind of felt sometimes I was pushing boundaries, and I did do quite a lot of training there. And some of the things I did were, as you say, more playful. So it is, I guess, having to stand up and ask for that. And I think, you know, with hindsight now, I probably was kind of quite young and naive and just thought, what have I got to lose, and just did it. Whereas I think sometimes the older you get, you're more aware of the risk and you tend to self-censor. So that was a bit different. But I think not everything is always fun. You know, I've had kids come to me and families come to me with extreme eating disorders. There's something called ARFID, which is like a restrictive food intake disorder, where, you know, they're under medical supervision. Like here in the UK, Great Ormond Street is like the big kids hospital, and they're being seen by this. So it's a delicate interplay, because it is such a major issue for these families. But at the same time, you want to lighten it up and you want to give them a break. And the same in therapy as well. You know, you can be going back to some really dark times with clients, and, you know, you're not going to laugh about it. I'm not going to say, oh, you're abused, haha. But, you know, but you have to do it in a kind of caring way, but also hopefully lighten it up so that they can see that they're moving forward. I wouldn't say it's fun, but you know what I mean? You know, you have to be sometimes prepared to go to those dark places, so that you can bring the light, however that is.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, I've been there. You know, I've put on my, you know, sort of big girl pants, if you want to call it that, and taken myself to therapy. And you go to those kind of dark places, but you know, people like yourself who are in the industry and understand the extremities of what it is that affects change and transformation, is that it's also having that balance of that lighter approach too. It's the, you know, someone myself who's very recently kind of experienced those things, is that when you've got a really fantastic therapist who can understand the very intricate balance between those two things, it's really phenomenal. So well done, and thank you for sharing that and just continuing to do what you're doing. I think you know, someone like you, and I've followed you quite a lot on social media, and before I did this preparing for this podcast, I was, you know, searching you out and trying to get lots of information about you. And you know, when I've looked at your work, I sort of go, gosh, this woman has done a lot and can do a lot. Is there anything that you feel like you can't do?
Oh, lots, probably. And I think that's really important. One of the things I always share, and I've always done, whether in my cooking classes or in this other stuff, is I've been there. So I think personal experience is really important. And I always say, like, it's like when you look for a coach or you look in business and you think, oh my God, she's amazing. Or, it looks so easy from the outside. It isn't always. And I think putting up your hand and saying, that's not me. Like, I started the cooking school and I've written in quite a lot of articles and things, and, where we've been featured as saying, I can remember sitting at the table with my son and spending hours getting him to eat this food, and then he'd throw it up. And I can remember like crying and shouting and all the things that, like, you're not supposed to say you do. But I think it just gives you more understanding and it gives you empathy. And one of the biggest lessons for me is sharing that with other people, because I think maybe it's a cultural thing, I don't know. I do think it's more for women than men as well, is we don't put up our hands and go, hey, I'm struggling here. And actually, if we all went, hey, I've been there, you would feel much better. And it's not Schadenfreude. It's just that that you're not alone, because that voice in your head is always, well, I can't do this, or I'm the only nutcase. I'm the only mum that has a fussy eater, or I'm the only person that needs to go to therapy. What's wrong with me? And that just isn't the case. And it's so powerful when you're able to do that for others and to see that they're not alone. And maybe they're not in the best situation, but they're not as bad as they thought they were. It's almost like you're halfway to helping yourself. So definitely I have those moments, and, I try and share them, not because I think it's, I think conventional wisdom is don't share them. You've got to be perfect. How could you be a leader if you don't tell everybody that you're amazing? But I would say run a mile from anybody that says, hey, I'm perfect, I've got it all sorted, because they haven't. Nobody can have it sorted. You get better and better, but at each level, what's that lovely phrase, new level, new devil. There's something else to do. And I think with confidence, which is probably the underlying theme for, me personally, just like you asked, as well as kind of in my work, it's a marathon, not a sprint. We're getting better. You can't be fixed instantly. You're not suddenly going to be, it's like people say, oh, I'm anxious. You're not anxious. You might have some anxiety at that point in time, but you're never going to be 100% calm, because, life has obstacles in the way. Things, who would have predicted COVID, for example? It'd be unnatural if you went through COVID and didn't feel anxious or slightly stressed. And that's a natural body mechanism. Your mind is there to, keep you alive. And if you were calm and relaxed all the time, you'd just probably like wander out in the middle of the road and get run over by a car. So, it's all there for a reason. So, bit of a long-winded way of answering your question, but yeah, I always, there are lots of things, of course, self-doubt for all of us, but I try and use those tools and, manage it and bring it back to the present and a bit more of a reality check.
Oh, I think it's such a fantastic statement to make, though, because I imagine so much of our listeners have felt those kind of feelings before. And yeah, sometimes when you're viewing, we talked a bit about that. Oh gosh, I've wrote it down. The comparison.
Compare, despair. I only learned that yesterday from a friend. I love that.
Yes, compare, despair. Thank you to your fantastic friend. Because that feeling of when a lot of other people are feeling alone and actually just being like, this is a thing and it's real and it's happening. It really helps create the less distance between you and then that person you're comparing yourself with. So, and I guess that's, it's probably a question I want to ask in terms of, I don't know if advice is maybe the right word, but or even like offering a piece of wisdom is the right word. But I guess out of all of your experiences, and we've talked quite a lot about the wide and varying audience that you have, is there some piece of knowledge or a little gem, a little diamond that you could give that could be applicable for the audience that you have?
There is, and I'm going to share it with you because I've actually got it framed here. So I hope it comes across, but I will say out loud for listeners that are just tuning in. So mostly in kind of I give it some in my mindset work, my coaching, I focus mostly on perfectionists. And I think a lot of us women fall in that category. And it's a lot of the things that you've talked about, comparing yourself to others, not feeling good enough, maybe not starting something. And you see that in food too, it doesn't have to be mums, but it's like, oh, my child is the only one that doesn't eat and all this kind of stuff. So I work a lot with people that feel they need to be perfect. And my caveat on that, my take on it is that being a perfectionist isn't about being perfect. It's about the fear of not being perfect. And there's a subtle but very important difference. So with that in mind, I want to share this, which is what I say to my clients often, which is, and I'll show you this, but I'll say it's, you don't have to be perfect to be amazing.
I love that. I really love that.
So I have this as my little mantra, and it's kind of something often I send to clients, but that works.
Do you, yeah, I know that probably with COVID, it's been, you know, more online, but I could imagine you like popping that in your handbag or taking it to and getting it out. That's fantastic. And I love as well the colors that you've got with it too. All the
that's so too. Yeah. And actually that's a little tip I would say, because your mind really works with images and the words. And so we tell ourselves things all the time, even when we think we're not. Like you said, you know, if I've got a limiting belief, I'm telling myself, oh, I'm stupid, or I can't do this, or, you know, listen, you've launched this amazing podcast. You know, that voice in your head could have been, I could never launch a podcast. Who am I to do that? So we tell ourselves that all the time. But with that in mind, use that visual stuff, particularly, you know, most of your listeners are really creative. So like we were saying before, like my little mug here, I've got a mug here that's got lots of a rainbow and lots of lovely stars. It says Radiate Positivity. And as I pick this up, I'm looking at this all the time and I'm soaking this up, so that you don't have to be perfect to be amazing, whatever affirmation you like, you know, put it on your screensaver, on your phone or on your laptop, or stick a poster on the wall, because every time you're taking in these visual clues, and you're soaking that up and giving yourself a message without realizing it. So those kind of things can be really powerful, just to, you know, shift that stuff.
Fantastic. Oh, I really love that saying. It's great. I think then probably before we get onto the creative exercise, which I've got some different ideas. But probably before we go on to that, I do want to ask you, what is next for you? What's your next kind of entrepreneurial endeavor?
Who knows? I've always got itchy feet. And that's the problem. And it's not that the grass is always greener, but I'm always like, oh, that looks interesting. Shiny object syndrome here. I definitely put my hand up. I don't know. I think I when I kind of reflect back, and I was doing that a bit for our chat today, thinking about kind of time, it seems to go in sort of 10-year blocks of or certain periods of time. You know, you do something in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s. So I don't know. I think that there's a common thread for me, and it probably is about, there's something I really love about, for me personally, learning, but also sharing that with others and making a difference to, you know, to people, helping them make a change in some way in their life. But as to yet, I don't know what it is. I think I'm just open-minded and see what comes next.
Very, very cool. And I'm excited to see what comes next too. I am sure that you will be doing something very amazing, and I'll be keeping my eye on you well after this podcast. I think in terms of the creative exercise, I mean, I love that we've had this sort of conversation about linking in what it is that you're doing with your cooking school right through into what you do with the mindset transformation. And I really kind of want to build on this maybe a little bit more, because I feel like it maybe could then help support maybe with what's next, or just continue the journey really. Okay. I kind of like the idea of some recipes for transformation. Ooh. So I'm thinking something that's quite fun. You're very fun. Recipes for transformation. I'm thinking having the same kind of methodology, right? So, you know, you have to get the elements of the ingredients and the methods of how to get this recipe for transformation. Some of the things that we've been talking about, I think that I really love the idea around the perfectionism, or being a perfectionist. So maybe it is a recipe for transformation on very much focused around the fear of not being perfect. And then maybe, because I know that's very much geared towards what it is that you already do. So I feel that you'll be quite comfortable, or could really look at creating like a recipe, have ingredients for that, and then a methodology that could support. But then there was something that you sort of said at the end about this sort of shiny object syndrome, which I kind of would like to dig in a little bit too. Okay. I think that maybe if you could then also do a recipe for transformation and have it really centered around this shiny object syndrome. I don't know if it's quite me saying not to have it, but as in a recipe that could help support with seeing past the shiny object and getting into the core of beyond that shiny object. I want to really encourage you to do something sensory. So whether or not it's, you know, and as well, it kind of depends what you feel most comfortable with. If you want to present back to me the way that you would, like with your cooking school in terms of a recipe, if you want to get some like pens and pieces of paper and like present it that way, or gosh, go get some beetroot, or, you know, like I would encourage you for it to be quite like interesting or just fun and playful, because I think that is very much linked into who you are. But I think by doing these two different recipes, I mean, I love what you're doing in terms of the perfectionism for women, because that is such a key thing. And I think it's so linked into the shame of like, we need to be perfect and performing all the time, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's just having lunch with a friend or whatever it is. So I think our listeners will, and it will really support you in probably refining even further your lightness or playfulness around that, and maybe give you some different ideas for how you can continue forward. But then, yeah, the shiny object syndrome, it's probably a bit more about you. And I know a lot of people as well, a lot of creative people who listen to this podcast who, really would like some support in, I guess, how to, look past the sparkle and get to the core of why it is that they would like to do whatever that is. So what do you think?
Oh, you've set me quite a challenge. My mind.
I have, right?
You have, right? Not one, she's been greedy, not one, but two.
I know.
As you were saying, shame, I was thinking you're going to have some Brene Brown fans. So,
yes.
Good. Send them. But actually, it reminded me, one of her books, of course, is called, isn't it? You know, I thought it was just me, but it isn't. I mean, that's kind of all you need to know in that book title, isn't it?
Yeah. And I love Brene. She is, there's been quite a few guests on this show. I feel like we're going to start calling it the Brene Brown fan club podcast. Hello, Brene. Maybe one day she might listen out. But anyway, yes, I think see how you go. And also, if you're finding as well that you're more energized towards one than another and you just want to do one, that's okay too. I think, just see how you go, and we'll take a little break and come back.
Cool.
Want to cook some really yummy treats? Well, you can find out more. Watch Nicole on YouTube at The Kids Kitchen and subscribe. You can join the club, join the cooking school at thekidskitchen.net, and of course follow her on Instagram. That's instagram.com/thekidskitchenuk.
Hey, Nicole, welcome back. How did you find that little creative exercise with the recipes?
I've been running around the house grabbing bits and pieces, so
really excited.
We'll see.
Very cool. Take it away.
Okay, so I got two little things that I thought. So I loved your suggestion of using the cooking kind of analogy as a recipe. So I have for you put together a little recipe for success for your creative women in business. So first of all, you need to get your scales. You need to get a set of scales.
Yeah.
And a nice little mixing bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want you to, we're going to measure. I didn't say the first important thing. Always be prepared for whatever you're going to do. So put your apron on, tie up your hair, which I'm not modeling now because you're going to get messy, and messy is fun. It doesn't always go perfectly. That's fine. So you want to put your bowl on your scales like this, and you want to weigh out confidence. Not too much, not too little. And I want you to focus really and really important on those scales, because too much is not going to be good. This cake, this recipe for success is not going to work, but too little and it's not going to rise. Okay. So then we're going to add in some self-belief. And this is the critical ingredient to make everything pop, to make it rise. Okay. So really, really important in anything you're going to bake in business, you need that self-belief. Okay. And then we're going to put in a large dose of intuition. So you can take a really good pinch and put that in there. You really can't have too much. All these recipes are very flexible. So if a 2-year-old, if a child can make this recipe, you can too. So just a pinch, it really doesn't matter. And then I'd like you to crack a few smiles as well, because let's lighten it up. Let's make it a little bit more fun. And then with your spoon, I want you, by the way, this is an IKEA bowl, actually.
Oh, very nice. Very
How good is that? So I'd like you to mix it up, and I'd like you to keep going. You need to do this for longer than you think. Stick with it. Consistency is the key. And then until everything is really smooth, really lovely, gorgeous, not lumpy. And then very carefully take your baking tin, and I want you to pour everything carefully into your tin like this. And then you want to bake this for about 45 minutes. So again, longer than you think, to get a really good rise on your success. And then when it cools, you can enjoy it and share it with others. Get them to tell you what they think about what a great job you did, and post photos so that we can all see this amazing cake that you've made with my recipe for success, because we'd love to see it. And like I said, if I do this in class with the kids, if a child can do this, you absolutely can do this too.
Wow. Oh, thank you so much.
Right.
You can definitely tell you are a seasoned YouTuber. Like, you can just it's so engaging in the way that you're able to display that. And thank you so much for sharing that.
It was a great challenge. I'm glad you like that.
And share with me the second
one. Yeah, so I've got a second one that's going to be more for those of you listening. I was doing that with visuals as well, but you wouldn't have missed out too much. So this one is something that anybody can do, and this one is really about showing you the power of your mind, because when you realize you can harness your mind, and it's kind of like, I always say, your mind's a bit like a stroppy toddler. So your mind doesn't always listen to what you want the first time. It doesn't understand. It's very emotional. But when you realize you can work with it rather than against it, wow, mind blown, literally. So whether you've got shiny objects and you want to see, you kind of want to see past them, whether you are holding yourself back because you're worried about failing or what other people think or not being perfect, this is going to show you how receptive or how suggestible your mind is, whatever you think. And I want to say to you that this isn't hypnosis. This is just a kind of visualization. Hypnosis is just tapping into that subconscious part of your brain. So we can all do it together. So I'll do it with you. So I want you just to shut your eyes. And it's a really nice one because it involves food as well. And I want you to put your palm out, like your open hand. And I want you to imagine that in the palm of your hand, I've put half a cut Sicilian lemon. And I want you to bring that hand to your nose, and I want you to smell that lemon, because there's nothing that smells like a lemon. Smell that citrusy smell. It's amazing. And then take your hand, and I want you just to gently kind of stroke the side of that lemon, that kind of waxy skin. You can feel it kind of dimpled. Yeah. And again, you can really feel that. Smell it again. That smells amazing. And then bring that lemon right up on your hand, right up to your mouth. And I want you to take a huge bite out of that lemon and chew it. And chew that lemon. Oh, you can feel like your face is puckering up, because whilst nothing smells like a lemon, nothing tastes like a lemon. It's so sharp, but really, really citrusy. And just keep chewing. Those juices are just flowing in your mouth. Chew that lemon. And you'll probably notice that you've started to have juices in your mouth. You've started to kind of salivate and open your eyes. And you can see there's nothing there. You've literally got a physical reaction in your mouth from something that doesn't exist. And that's because every thought creates the belief, creates an action, and even a physical reaction. So hopefully that shows you that your mind is always listening. Your mind is doing what you tell it to do. And we just need to tell it to do it in the present now. I can, like I think Nadia said, didn't she, on the Bake Off, I am and I can. And that's really what we need to tell yourself. So I hope that little recipe there was a bit of fun for everybody.
I loved that. And there was something about when I felt like I was biting into that as well. At first, it actually felt very like sour and uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
But then as I felt that the lemon was kind of dissipating, it didn't feel so bad. Yeah, you're incredibly talented, and thank you. I think
that's all right.
Both of those creative exercises were so varied and different, and I'm sure our listeners will just really appreciate that. And I am confident that they've gotten so much out of you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It really was so wonderful. You gave me some real exciting and interesting questions to think about, and it's always really nice to get those creative juices flowing in all senses of the word. So
and I look forward to seeing more of you, seeing what the next projects are, and checking in on YouTube, and just keeping in contact. Thank you so much.
Process-based, co-creating transformation and delivering results. Curious for more? Then head over to Instagram. That's Kalc __ on Instagram.